So, we might have a USGS stream gauging site on the reach, and if we've got it, level one, they have triggered that information. And it might be able to help with understanding that past flood history, and understanding what we might be looking at out there. And what we're pointing out in this slide is that there's other organizations that also collect water discharge data that could be used. Oregon Division of Water Resources, they have a website with a whole bunch of sites across Oregon that we could tap into. And so does the Bureau of Reclamation. They have some sites, stream gauging sites that might happen to be on the reaches where we're collecting data. And so during level one, take a hard look and see if there's any information that comes out and is available to us. We'll want to estimate discharge from a tributary that we may encounter, given that it's contributing greater than 20% of that discharge, and we think it's at least a half-mile long, and we want to estimate the flow and then put that in the comments. And we briefly touched on this yesterday in Katie's talk regarding the channel units. Okay, so now we're within 10 days of our survey, and we found a good spot near the bottom of our survey to take the measurement. What kind of channel unit do we want to measure discharge in? And so we're looking for a cross-section site that has uniform, non-turbulent flow that's relatively free of obstructions. These pool tail crests, they tend to have flow lines with straight velocities that are not crisscrossed, all wild and turbulent. So we're really looking for smooth lines. Obstructions are those large wood or boulders that can alter the hydraulics and might not be good for a measurement. So with that, move rocks and stuff away before you take the measurements in the site to really make it nice and clean. And I'll say it again, set up your site and make it clean before you start taking measurements. Kind of once we're in and taking those measurements, we're committed, and we really don't want to move anything around. Yeah, and so in this circumstance, right through here would be a really nice smooth flow spot, laminar flow. How about in here? Where's a good spot that might not have a lot of turbulence in those good smooth flow lines? And kind of reading the surface water can help us with this. Okay, so we use Q as our variable for discharge. And how do we measure and do the math on discharge? Let's first look at the variables, velocity times area. And then furthermore, area is height times width. So in the simplified scene, we measure depth and width, and the area we calculate is 4 times 5. So we get 20 square feet. Imagine the velocity of the water moving past is uniform, and we measure that at 1 foot per second. We get a discharge of velocity times area, and look at those units. And for velocity, it's feet over second, and then area is square feet. And so we ended up with 20 cubic feet per second. And that's that discharge for that point in time. Let's look at velocities out in nature. Imagine rocks protruding through the stream bed. As water runs past that, it creates roughness that dissipates energy, and it causes friction. And then also, please remember yesterday from those bankful diagrams of how velocity works around meanders. What we get is higher velocities on the outside of the curves and lower velocities on the inside. So let's take this background and understanding to take a high quality measurement for stream survey and ultimately pick a straight section of smooth flow. That's really what we're looking for. Because those frictional forces are heavier on the bottom, what we're interested in is measuring velocity at about 60% of the depth down. And we know this from many USGS studies. We know that the average velocity for shallow stream channels, and ultimately nature is not set up in these smooth rectangular boxes for us because we have variable depths along the bottom of the stream channel. And so we want to measure the stream channel, and ultimately these are calculus equations for looking at the area under a curve for doing this task. And our cross-sectional area is represented here by a series of these rectangular columns. Okay, so first thing, if you don't have an Excel program to compute discharge, talk to your crew lead, a district staff in the aquatics program, or feel free to talk to us and we'll get something for you. So again, we want to measure that velocity at 6/10 depth for streams that are less than 2.5 feet deep. But what about if it's deeper than that? It's deeper than 2.5 feet. Then if that's the case, then we want to take that measurement at 2/10 of the depth and at 8/10 of the depth and average that for measurement for our velocity point for that cell. And so when we're doing this, what we're interested in doing is taking the width and dividing that section into at least 25 subsections. Commonly, what we're doing is ignoring the first cell on the wetted edge if that flow is negligible. So, if it's 0, we can just go ahead and skip that and get into the next cell. When we're taking a measurement, we want to stay at least 15 inches or an arm's length downstream and off to one side of the flow meter, not to impede with the hydraulics around it. And while we're standing there, we want to take a minimum of 40 seconds to take that reading. And what we're going to see is little ebbs and flows, little spikes in the velocities, and it's going to go up and down and up and down. And it's going to take the average reading for that 40 seconds. And our goal of this game is to not have more than 10% of the total flow pass through any one of these cells through the subsections. And that's part of the QA/QC. And so what we like to get into the practice of is working up our data out there in the field and doing the math before we leave the site and making sure that none of these are above 10%. And if it is, then we can break that one into 2 cells and split the width in half and then take 2 measurements to get that down. Again, QA/QC. Seek more training by trained folk at your home unit if you still have questions. But really, our goal is to have a really good demonstration for you as well this week. And so we want everybody who really doesn't have experience or might have questions about this to have these probes in their hand, taking the measurements, with us looking over your shoulders. And we really want to see you guys be comfortable and confident with this. Just a little bit of practice, and we think you'll have it. All right. The Forest Service is a safety-oriented culture. It's the workplace that you are now a part of. And so, would you take a discharge measurement in this kind of scenario? And, looking at this, we see turbulent water, really not smooth flow lines. It gets constricted through this little gorge and the velocities are really ramping up. And where would you take discharge at in here? Please don't. This is a safety issue and everybody needs to come home unharmed. And so if you're faced with taking a discharge measurement in something like this, you have the card to say no and try to find a safer place. And then we have some rules of thumb on when to take a discharge measurement, and we can share those. Would you take a discharge here? Yeah, really try to find that smooth flow perpendicular to the velocities going through. And then, sometimes down on the bottom of the reaches, we have these alluvial fans where water goes subsurface. And so water is going from the surface down through the stream bed, and then it might flow out down lower in the next stream down. These ones are not representative of the reach that we're surveying. And so we don't want to take a discharge measurement in here. What we want to do is go up to a point right above where this alluvial fan feature starts fanning out or spreading out to a constriction location and take the measurement right up there. And we had this situation on Camp Creek in the Malheur National Forest, and folks were measuring it at the top, and it was approximately 5 CFS. And then down near the mouth of the Camp Creek, it was approximately 2.5 CFS. And so, for example, it lost half of its flow through hypereic as it went across that alluvial fan. And so this is a watch out situation as well.
Hey, Bob, I wanted to take the opportunity to address that question I had at the end of the stream temperature presentation, in that
Yes,
this is a really good illustration to see that alluvial fan is not a good place to put a temperature recorder. You have hypereic flow, it's exposed, so you'd want to put that temperature recorder well upstream where you have representative flow and you have some shade. But yeah, thanks for that opportunity.
Yeah, great information, Klug. All right, here, we kind of have these little turbulent pockets, and then it looks like we have some smooth water in there, non-turbulent water. And so could we take a discharge in here? Absolutely. Really take the time to find a nice transect across there to take that measurement. In a situation like this, absolutely. Again, make sure you're perpendicular, your tagline is set up, and we'll talk about that when we're setting up in the demonstration area. Remember, when we're holding our sensor, once we get it fixed for that depth that we're taking that measurement, we want to orient it to make sure it's perpendicular to the flow. And then make sure we're standing an arm's length away from the sensor as we're taking that 40-second measurement.
Hey, Bob,
I want measuring stream, or go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to also point out it's a point of confusion for new people on that tape. That tape can be at any height, basically, whereas on a bankful measurement, the tape has to be at the bankful level. So just be clear about that. You can put that tape at any level versus a bankful measurement where it has to be at bankful.
Yeah, that's a great point. That is a little bit confusing. The tagline can be anywhere, and for discharge, we're measuring the water surface depth, and then we're taking that stream flow measurement at that 60% of depth if it's less than 2.5 feet. But so that's the thing for discharge. But for bankful, yeah, we want to measure what the channel area is up to the bankful. And so, yeah, we're not measuring the depth to the water surface for those bankful measurements. We're measuring it up to that bankful feature to get the depth. And so think about what it is that we're collecting to make sure we're looking at the right place. Some of those details are really, really important. All right, measuring stream flow for most streams is really relatively straightforward. However, what we had found was small streams were really becoming a problem for a few reasons. We have these swaffer meters, and the swaffers have these little propellers on them that spin. And if you need to measure a shallow sand bed stream, there's in the handbook, we have some minimum depth criteria for measuring those. Also, for the Marsh McBurneys, there might not be enough depth to get the unit under the water surface. And these conditions have proven that we really need a new technique for measuring small streams, particularly on the east side of the Cascades. And so kind of curious if folks might have been playing with these and would love to hear your feedback. And so what we did was we gleaned some guidance from USGS reports on how to collect the most accurate stream flow measurements without very expensive instrumentation. And so we start by getting a straight reach with at least 3 channel widths and length. And we have it from A to B. And so we have a tagline set up. The travel time, it should exceed 20 seconds. And so what we're recommending is throwing an object just upstream, a racquetball, and starting the timer once it floats by A, and then stop the timer once it passes by B. And then repeat this 3 times to get that average velocity. Then we measure the wetted area at A and B, and then we average that. Collect 10 depth measurements if it's greater than 5 feet, and 5 measurements for depth if it's less than 5 feet. And so here's the form that we're recommending using. And so we can see here's the upper cross section, the width, here's the depth measurements. We get the average depth, we get an area calculation. And then the same thing for the lower cross section B. And then we get the average area by taking these two. And so we have 3 travel times, 32, 28, 34. We average those. We have a fixed distance, and we calculated the velocities. And then we had this roughness coefficient of 0.85, and we calculate the discharge from there. So why should we use a roughness coefficient when we're taking something at the surface? And so ultimately that surface represents 80 to 85% of the mean velocity. And so we chose to use 85 for that coefficient, 0.85. And then, yeah, just keep your eye out on the weather, and remember to measure discharge within 10 days of the start of the stream survey to maintain high quality data moving forward. And thank you guys for your time, and look forward to seeing you guys out there on the river.
Anybody have questions? Hey, Bob, I wanted to make a point on estimating the discharge of a tributary, because we're required to determine whether that discharge is less than or greater than 20% of the discharge, the flow that's going down the main stem. It's really important to know what your discharge is before you get to that tributary junction, and to estimate that. So if you know, say, you're in a stream with 30 CFS, or make it simple, 20 CFS, then your discharge would be about 4 CFS as the break on whether that flow is more than or less than 20%. Remember, 20% is the cutoff, is a rule of thumb for whether you break a reach or not. So if you're over 20% and you see different characteristics, different dimensions of your habitat units, then you may break for reach right there. So yeah, it's important to know what that discharge is, and then you can make a better estimation on that tributary discharge as well.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. It's a great point. All right, Katie. Well, I think that concludes discharge.
All right. And I'm sure there are questions out there, but if those going in the field tomorrow will definitely be able to have a chance to actually see it in person and ask questions as they see that demonstration. Okay. I need to just here. Okay, we're going to talk about quality control and quality assurance next. We had just had somebody mention about using, they actually did use the float method on the Colville. Said it worked out pretty well. Did you, Lizzie, did you use the protocol that we put together?
Yes, we used the protocol that you put together.
And what did you use for your object, your float object?
We found that the racquetballs work pretty well.
Okay. Good. Seems like everybody's got a spare racquetball sitting around. They're not very expensive, so it's always good. All right. Okay, so we're going to talk about quality assurance and quality control. This is really important to make sure that we are collecting good quality data throughout our surveys. Oh, yeah. I don't know if you guys can hear that. I got music in the background in mine. So consistency is really important for our quality control because we want to have that data be consistent over the years that we survey. We want repeatability. Since we've been doing this stream survey since 1989, we've basically had the same attributes that we've collected over time. So if we have really good quality control, we can use that to compare our streams over the years. And reliability. We have had issues at times when we weren't sure about our reliability of our data, but with the quality control program, we can actually make sure that that data is good and that it's reliable and that other sources outside of maybe the Forest Service that look at it feel that it's viable data.
Are y'all seeing the presentation? I'm not.
Huh. Be nice if you guys told me to share. I don't think I shared my presentation.
Yeah, I can't see a presentation and just all of the bubbles with the people's names in it.
My crew is sitting here, so I didn't even think about it. They're seeing the presentation. So let me share with everybody. That would be awesome.
I like sharing.
That's better.
See it now?
Yeah, I'll see, we can see it, or I can see it.
Perfect.
All right. Everybody else can see it? All right. Hopefully you didn't miss much. So maybe. So the levels of responsibility, you can see here that I've got the 3 levels. Your Forest Fisheries Program Manager, of course, is the top person they're usually the supervisor, the stream survey coordinator. But you can see I made that box the smallest because a lot of times they kind of let you run your own program. They might not know exactly what's going on. They just see the data. They don't know how the programs run. The stream survey coordinator on the other side, they're the ones that are doing all the training, making sure that data is being collected correctly and being support for the stream surveyor. And you can see that the stream surveyor box is the biggest because you guys are the most important because that's where the data, the quality control is on your hands. So you really are the most important part of this big cog. So where do we start? It starts with training. We have NR9, this just the stream inventory training you guys are at right now, and then the field training for the rest of this week. And then there'll be follow-up training from the forest. So any of those forest options that you have that we aren't covering here, make sure those get covered. And then also you're going to hopefully go over all of these items that we're training for this week. You'll go over those again in the field at your forest level because It's going to be different once you hit the stream. And again, those are items that are not covered by NR9, need to get covered at the. And then there's always those items that need more time. Wood is always one of those items I like to think that probably people just need to take some more time in the field to look at. Discharge, you might have a different meter than the one that was in training. Those are all things that you need to make sure that you cover at the forest level. And again, quality control starts with having all the right tools before you actually start the survey. So those of you people who are coordinators, you might be considered your stream survey coordinator, but you're also the quality control coordinator. So your responsibilities are you need to provide that additional training that's needed at the forest level. You should be conducting a test reach. We're going to be conducting a test reach on Thursday, so you should be doing something at your forest as well. You need to review the data collection for consistency. Now that's something that as you get through the season, you should take a look at your data sheets of your surveyors and just make sure that they're collecting all the data they're supposed to, that all the fields are filled out correctly, and that the field data sheets look clean. And there's always follow-up field visits, whether they're just hanging out for a day or just dropping in on a crew. Those are really important to answer any of those questions that might come up. If any stream surveyor doesn't really feel comfortable with something, a particular attribute, you need to make sure that that gets conveyed to your coordinator so that they can follow up on that. The quality control coordinator also has the responsibility to make sure that that report writing gets completed. So when we talk about setting up a test reach, it should be at least a 1/4 mile long. It should include some decent wood. I know sometimes it's hard to get 12 pieces of wood, but you want to have a nice diversity of habitat units and get as much wood as you can within that test reach. So when you run that test reach, you really should pair up the crews as they would be during the summer. There may be some changes for crews during the summer, but generally your first crews that when they're going to be out, they should be the one running the test reach together. And all that proper training should be done before you actually even get to the point where you're conducting that test reach, so that they feel comfortable in the stream. And then after that's all done, then the coordinator then will evaluate those crew surveys, compare it to, there should be a control survey that was done in the beginning, like we'll do on Thursday. You guys will definitely see how this is done, and then compare that data. And then if there's things that are wrong or that need to be corrected, this is the time before you actually get out and start doing it on a regular basis. Now, the surveyor responsibilities. This is most of all of you guys who are just your general surveyors. Just make sure you ask questions. If something isn't clear, don't just, and you can't find it in the book, make sure you ask somebody. It's better to ask that question than to just continue on with something and not be doing it correctly. You want to fill out all the forms completely. This is something that can really, really grind me when I'm doing data entry. If I see that there's missing data, especially if, and the header should be all filled out as correctly. And from sheet to sheet, when you've got different sheets, the photo log form, the channel unit form, the special case form, all of those forms should match up. So if anything gets fixed, it needs to be fixed on all the forms. You should be checking your sequence orders, your channel unit numbers, and any other data fields every day. The longer you wait, if you don't check, say you got a mistake at number 10 and you went to number 12 and you skipped an SO, and 4 days later you've got 400 sequence orders, you got a lot of work to do to change that. So make sure that you check those fields every day, look through those forms, and make sure everything is correct. And then make sure you correct them right away and in all of your data sheets. We talked about level 1. Dave talked about that. And that's just doing your detective work. It's you're gathering as much information on that stream as you can. There should be old reports. There's old preliminary reach forms. Go through those and really pick up that data on all of that, that survey that you're going to be working on. There is a pre-survey checklist that you can use. It's in the binder, back in the quality control handbook, in the quality control tab in the binder. That's something that you can go through and make sure you cover all the things on the pre-survey checklist. And again, it really starts with having those right tools. And after the survey is done, you want to make sure all your data sheets are clean, that all the errors are corrected, and they're corrected on all the sheets. Then there'll be this post-survey checklist. I have a bunch of forms that I have the crew do, have them download all the photos. Make sure that if you have a post-survey checklist, you can just use that and check off as you go through. And then there should be a survey map. The survey map doesn't have to be completely done at the end of each survey, but you should at least have some kind of survey map done with the most important items checked off, and all your downloads of your data points, if you've done GPS points, should get downloaded right after that first survey. I don't like to start a new survey without getting a lot of that stuff done beforehand. So we're going to do just a quick exercise. I'm going to put up a data sheet, and I want you guys to take a look at it for a little bit. And then I'm going to give you like maybe 5 minutes or so. Just take a look at that data sheet. And then we're going to come back and we're going to think about what's wrong with some of the data on this sheet that I'm showing you. And then think about types of errors and ways that you can prevent them. So here's the data sheet. So go ahead and take about 5 minutes. We'll come back and look at this and maybe write down some things that you think are wrong with this data sheet. All right, everybody have a chance to look at that wonderful data sheet. So I'm gonna go ahead and we're gonna kind of free for all this and I'm gonna have you, I'm trying to get the presentation here real quick. Yeah. Are you guys seeing the presentation? The data sheet?
Yeah, the channel unit form.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, cool. My setup isn't conducive to. Now it seems like it's gone. Sorry, I'm getting back to this here. Okay, you guys still can see the data sheet?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I want, go ahead and people and take off your mics. We're gonna, like I said, this could be a free for all, but I want to get your guys what you think you see on this data sheet that's wrong. Just go for it.
The
Where-
headers complete.
Top.
I love
The
it. Okay,
sequence is
sorry.
out of order. It's missing numbers.
Yep, there's a lot of missing numbers, right?
Well, the header isn't filled out, for one
Yep, and
thing.
that's really important. That's a good catch. The stream name is not, the header's not filled out completely. You can skip the hooks and stuff, but you definitely don't want to skip the stream name. That's really important. I don't want to see a data sheet laying around and not have a stream name on it.
The
What
numbers
else?
are out of sequence. The numbers have missing sequence on
Yep,
the
so
left side.
yep, we went 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9. So they already screwed up pretty early.
The channel units are also not following in sequence order.
Right, so they're wrong, and you can see like from number 10 to number 12, there's F5, and then they went to FN1. So if they, that's definitely all the Fs, no matter what kind of Fs they are, remember, they're all consecutive, so you wouldn't start over again. And they're definitely, yeah, and they're just off. And another one too is the thing that you have to think about is sometimes when you're looking like at F4, you can see that the S's are off. If you're looking at the one in front of you, sometimes it kind of pops up in your head and you put S5 when you really didn't mean to do it that way. Because you're looking at a number in front of you. So what else is going on?
Pool crest depth is missing in S1 and formed by is missing in S5 and S6 and
Right. So
S8.
they weren't consistent in collecting formed by, and then there's missing data as well. What else? Anything else in here? What else?
Missing vegetation samples, and the ones they did take weren't at the places they said they would.
Right. So where would you normally take? So you're going to take your samples for vegetation starting on SO5, correct? Right? Because we're
Correct.
going to take those are measured units. You'd start at 5 and then you go 15, 25, 35. Well, they don't even have an SO5. So they actually already screwed up. So they missed that. And then those wouldn't be in the right locations.
I was going to ask about the blank, all the blanks in there. Are you supposed to put zeros if there's nothing completely across the page, if there's nothing, or can you line it out and to show that there should be or is not that you didn't have anything there?
I like to do, like, especially for, say, unstable banks and wood, I like to put zeros in where I didn't find anything. So that way you know that you looked for it. If it's a piece of data that you didn't collect, I would put a line through there. And you could put a line through some of those as well. But I like to put lines through things so that I know that it didn't get collected or we didn't find anything. Or you put zeros. It's up to you guys. But I like to do that, Dolly. Definitely, I want to be able to keep those data sheets clean and put zeros in. Yep.
Yeah, just to make sure that you didn't miss and didn't take it, and that's my
And
question.
just missed it.
Right, right. Is it a good thing at the end of a survey to have your partner read over your notes
Yes, you
and
should
have a
both,
spot
yeah.
check?
you
Or-
should both check through the numbers and looking at the data. It never hurts to have double eyes on data, for sure. I would do it at the end of every day. What else is going on here?
This person is alternating between tally marks and numbers for their wood material.
Yep. Under the
Mhm.
wood material, you can see there's tally marks on some and regular numerals on the others. That should never happen on a data sheet. Be consistent. You can choose to keep your tally marks on the right and the rain paper and then put the numerals in, but don't switch between on the data sheets. Make sure that you stay consistent throughout,
Let's
because that could be
pull.
111.
Let's be longer than they are wider.
Good
For
catch.
slope
So,
pull.
like which one? Let's see. So on like number 11, that's okay, right? Because that's what kind of pool is that on number 11?
Oh,
I don't know, it's so sloppy, I can't read it.
It is, but it looks like an
Okay.
SSPL, which would be a plunge pool.
oh,
Which
okay.
can that be wider than it is long?
Oh,
No.
God.
Yeah,
No.
so a plunge can
Yeah.
be, and that's the one thing that if you do have a plunge pool and you want to make sure that, especially if it's wider than it is long, that you actually put plunge pool in there.
Right plunge pool in the notes, in the rest of the line there, you mean?
No, I would actually code it because the SSPL is actually the code for plunge pool. So I would actually code it a plunge pool.
Yeah, it's so sloppy, I can't even see what it is.
And that's a really important thing, is that having a clean data sheet, especially for those who are going to be doing data entry, you'll understand how important it is to have a clean data sheet. That it's usually best to have the person who has the best handwriting be the recorder.
No, S5 is wider than it is long. Should that be a plunge pool of some sort?
Which one?
Number 8 or S5?
So it's 2025. So realistically, we don't know, right? So
Right.
it shouldn't be. I mean, realistically, that's not correct if it's not, but it could be a plunge pool. We don't know. But that's where that becomes important, that you actually code it as a plunge pool. But if it's not a plunge pool, then that's not a legitimate pool.
Since it's wider than long.
Right, exactly.
I forgot, which one do you add the shorter unit to?
So my crew person asked, like, so if there's a short riffle, like say in between two pools that isn't legitimately a riffle because it's wider than it is long, you can add that to the pool below. So if you had an extra 10 feet, you would just add that to the pool below. And we'll talk about more about that in the field tomorrow too.
The tributary is missing fish accessibility and weather, and the temperature.
And it's missing one other thing too. It's missing one other item in there.
Which one is that?
Oh, flow contribution, yeah.
22. The tributary should have percent contribution, bank orientation, gradient, and temperature, and access, whether it has access to fish. So those are things that you can write just straight across there. And the other thing, my crew person asked about the zeros on tributaries. That's how we put the data in. We don't do lengths and widths on tributaries, so we just put zeros in just for a placeholder.
Oh, my.
You can put the width in there if you want, but you just, the zeros just kind of put a placeholder.
Do the zero or the dash, or do you want to use zero?
I would do the zeros. It's true. Anything else? We don't do dry tributaries. What are some other things on this sheet?
The waterfall isn't completely filled out.
Right, and they didn't say, I like to put in my especially my special case units, I like to see special case form, because you never know when you're going to have somebody else doing data entry. It may be somebody who's not really familiar with stream inventory, so they wouldn't know to go look for data somewhere else. So you might only put a few points of data on that line, but you definitely want to direct them to where the rest of the data is for that unit. Anything else in there?
Huh.
I don't know if anybody else has said it, but some of the formed bys on the pools are not filled out.
Right, they weren't consistent about, and that's a forest option, but if you're going to do it, be consistent throughout and make sure that you fill them out on all of your pools. And all the codes are at the bottom of these sheets, so there's really no excuse for not filling something in. Anything else? How about the times that we usually use military time? So there's some issues with time. They had used 0900 at the top and then they 1:30. Well, it looks like 1:30. We're not really sure. So be consistent by using your military time. There's one big one that people are missing. It's just kind of a general. It might be hard to see on the sheet that you're looking at.
Yeah, I wish I could make it bigger. Can't see stuff.
Normally you'd have a piece of paper in your hand. That would be the easier part. But the biggest thing that you want to be aware of is that, like, I mean, look at some of the decimal points that you can't see some of the decimal points in between the numbers.
Oh, yeah.
So say like number 7 at F4, it kind of looks like it might be 27 instead of 2.7. You just want to really make sure that you are very distinct about your decimal points within your data. Again, if somebody who's not used to doing data, they might put 27, not really thinking about it. So.
Yeah, that's important.
Yes. And like say a number 3, it's like, is that 750 or is it 730? What is that number?
Yeah,
just
what
really
is it?
make sure that you're, writing out clear numbers on your data sheets. Anything else? Another big one that, like, when you're looking at unstable banks, I'm not sure, I can't remember if it got covered or not, but you have a choice to you collect either total or you collect length left and right. You don't generally do both. You can only enter the data one way or the other. So make a decision if you're going to collect left and right, then make sure that your totals add up to your left and right. But you might redo your data sheet and decide to take out the total length and just use left and right. But again, you want to make sure that you just put zeros in those, because you should be looking at unstable banks on every channel unit.
What line was that?
So like number, like say like number 15, they only put 110 down for total length, but they didn't put a left and right bank. But later on, they put a 0 and 25, so they look both at left and right. So you need to be consistent throughout. So making sure that you're putting the data, if you're going to collect it on left and right, make sure that you collect it on left and right on all of your channel units.
Okay. Unstable bank. Oh, there it is.
All right, so I think, there's probably some other things on here too, but the biggest thing, I know this is an over-the-top data sheet. So it really is just to kind of illustrate what can go wrong on your data entry sheet. So just some of the common errors that we talked about, like misplacing the decimals or not writing them in very well. I like lengths and widths just using whole numbers, no decimals. It's not worth the quality control issues to have such a small amount of data or length or width in there. So I stick to whole numbers on those two attributes. Misnumbering SOs is a really big one that, again, people think they've got it down, but just make sure you check those every day. And then leaving field blank or field data blank. You just need to make sure you get all of that data. And if you forget something, you either got to go back and collect it, or it's going to end up just staying blank, which is what we don't want. And then one of the other big ones is just putting the data in the wrong field on the form. And then there's just always just plain forgetting to collect the data. It definitely has happened. But it's one of those things that if you just keep track of, your recorder just needs to keep track of all those things that need to be collected and make sure that all the data fields are filled out correctly. So just some extra tips. Check those SO numbers during lunch, at breaks. If your partner's got to bust the brush to get to the flood prone, take a look at the numbers. If they're going through Devil's Club, they're going to be there a while. So check through those numbers. And if you're dragging a tape, if you've got a long distance SO, you want to make sure that you're keeping track of how many times you actually say you have a 200-foot drag tape and you have a 800-foot channel unit, fast water. You want to make sure you're keeping track of those numbers of sections. And it's a good thing to kind of keep, if you want to keep that consistent, try not to go over 1,000 feet on your fast water units and just break it into 2 fast water units back to back. And you can definitely do that, but it'll just make it easier and you won't skip those sections. What can you expect for the summer? You should have an experienced person with you for 1 to 3 days at least, to help with general questions when you first go out. And if you're not really comfortable even after that, make sure that they're still hanging out with you. And just definitely don't hesitate to ask questions. It doesn't get you anywhere if you don't ask the right questions, if you can't remember something or you're not sure how to collect something, and make sure you get that question answered. And if you need a coordinator to join you, ask them to come out for a day or even just a half day. I'm going to skip this section because we're not going to do these resurvey sections, but we definitely, I may get back to this in another year, but for this year, we're going to skip this one. Data entry. This is something that you do. I like to see it done during the season if possible. Doesn't always happen, but if you want a data entry class and you want to be able to enter your data during the season, I can definitely help you with that, and then help you with the data entry quality control as well. So my involvement, I usually try to visit 2 or 3 forests a year just to come check on crews and hang out. You can definitely request a visit if you want me to come out and help with any kind of weird sections you might have. I helped out the Willamette last year, just looking at kind of a strange section that needed to be reviewed, and we kind of figured out what to do with that. And then I evaluate the crews during the year just to make sure everything's looking good. I like to get data from forests if I can, just to look at some data sheets. And then after everything is put into the database, I get to run all the quality control on the data. So please, I'm here to help. I know that's not always I am here to help, really. Don't hesitate to contact me. That's my work cell. That's my easiest place to get a hold of me. Emails, and then if I'm online, you can always hit me on the Teams meetings and everything. But make sure you ask questions, and we'll definitely can talk more about any kind of things you got to ask questions about tomorrow. So have a great summer. Any questions? All right. No questions? All righty. Looks like we are scheduled for a break. So we will take 15 minutes. So we'll be back at 9:25, please.
Okay, is everybody back? Can you see my presentation? Anybody?
I see it.
Okay,
I see it.
cool. Well, Katie, shall we start? Okay.
She's not quite back yet. Oh, here she is.
Are we ready, Katie?
Yep, go for it.
All right. Okay, this presentation is on the final reach delineation. So imagine yourself coming to the end of fish or water or whatever that reach is. And you ask question to yourself, did your reaches come out the way you expected? So what that does is you think back to the level 1 office overview, the detective work, as Katie puts it, that you did back in the office before you came out, and you got a vision for what the stream would look like and how it would be characterized. And you're going to ask yourself, is this the way that I envisioned? Is this the way that it was captured and characterized in the office overview? And what did we learn? Okay, so what does the final reach form provide for us? It justifies and it documents the final reach breaks by using the channel and the valley conditions you observed and measured during the survey in the field. So it nails down those final reach breaks, and it creates a final map for the stream survey report. And so you'll have nailed down reach breaks and delineated for anybody who wants to pick up that survey to see how the stream broke out, where you started, where you ended. And that gives you a framework. The reaches provide a framework for data input into the AQS database. So it also determines whether the preliminary Rosnian stream type for each reach is valid or needs to be adjusted. Or it could be a Rosnian stream type that was classified in a previous survey. And so you're going to determine whether that's good, it's valid, or it needs to be changed. Hopefully, most times it'll be good to go. It'll be the same. The final reach delineation sets the framework for entering data into the database. So it assures that the starting SO, sequence order number, and the ending SO on the final reach form are sequential and consistent with the data. That's one quality check. It provides a background profile for the ologists who are looking at the big picture of your stream and for any future surveys. I know our fish biologist just loves the stream survey reports, and he uses those for analyzing timber sail streams and fish habitat in timber sail areas, and as well as other purposes. So there's definitely going to be some other eyes looking at this. So you want to think in terms of how other specialists, ologists are going to be viewing this. Okay. Now, before you head home from the field, you need to answer this question. Are the valley and or the channel conditions upstream of the preliminary reach break substantially different from the conditions already observed downstream? Do they really warrant a reach break? And so in the field is the best place to look at your data. Hopefully you worked up your Roskin stream type measurements, your entrenchment ratio, your bankful width over depth ratios, and you got a good idea what those numbers are coming out and how that looks against the Roskin stream typing chart that you should have in the field as well. Okay, the protocol requires that the field data for the final reach form shall be entered in the field as soon as the reach endpoint is determined. That's the best place, because if you had any go backs, you missed some data. You got all this data, the characteristics of the stream, the conditions, the habitat quality in your mind, fresh in your mind. So plan on having a little time to sit down with your partner and go over the data and fill out that final reach form. It's the best place to do it. Ask yourself how long the final reaches are and look at your data and see, add up those lengths, make sure that if you have anything less than a half mile long, that's acceptable. And there's a good reason for it. There's, characteristics that warrant that. But make sure you've measured bankful at least 3 times in representative riffles that qualify. So check your data for those 3 bankful measurements. And if you get a really long reach that's like several miles long, are there similar reach characteristics throughout? Is it really that homogeneous, or does your data and observations warrant that it should be split? Hopefully you've made that decision before you've got several miles into the survey, and you're asking that question as you get further along. But there's some streams that have really long reaches like that. Find out if there were actually 2 Woolman pebble counts. Make sure they were done even for the shorter reaches. And did you check your bankful data in a minimum of 3 fast water units? And make sure you end and start all reaches at channel units that can be specifically identified on the ground. So, because future surveyors are going to be coming back to that same stream and will be looking for those reach endpoints, or there may be a survey like on our district for a timber sale project, and they may be looking for that same endpoint as well, provided they can be found on the ground. Now, waterfalls are easy to find, but then there's other features that are not so easy to find that you want to make sure that they are an enduring feature. That's a benchmark, landmark type of feature that can be found. I just want to point out Lost Creek on the right. That used to be a real gem. It used to be like our local secret. Very few people knew about it until the age of social media. And in recent years, somebody posted this little slot canyon on social media. And now we see people coming. I've talked to people hiking in there, and they said, "Oh, I saw it on social media. It's a really cool place." And so these places that once were, treasures in my mind are still treasures, but there's also a lot of other people discovering these cool places. And you get to
Hey, Dave,
encounter them as well.
Darlene
Yeah.
has a question.
Oh, sure. What's that?
Most of the reaches that have been done on our forest, they put in reach markers, like pounded in stakes with plastic tops or plastic caps.
Okay.
So if they're redoing the different streams and stuff that have already been surveyed, should they be using those?
As long as they're known to endure, they're permanent markers that can last 20, 30 years, they need to have some longevity to them. And I sure wouldn't put them down in an active channel where the substrate's moving. You'd want to put it up on a flood terrace where it wouldn't get washed out. So
yeah, I can still remember where a couple of them are, and rebar seems like it would last for a while, but
yeah,
when they're doing the preliminary work and they go to the records and find those, then what, should they go and try to attempt to find those spots and then start the reaches and redo that from the previous markers that have been set
Yeah.
out, if they're still okay?
yeah, that's the purpose for the markers, is to mark that reach break. Then yeah, that helps define that start and end point, so you can start and end at the same place, so that you have better quality of data that compare from one year's reach data to the other. Now, I know in our district, it could be 15 years before we get back to the same stream. That's probably about as long as maybe 20 be the most, but yeah, I wouldn't count on, that survey unless you got a real high profile, high interest stream that has
Yeah.
like a listed fish in it or something. I
Well,
would be
so
making sure you had a very permanent feature or marker.
yeah, and I was thinking like everybody uses GPS. A GPS point is probably just as accurate to
you go.
relocate something.
Yeah, as long as your GPS is accurate and you don't lose that data point, it's backed up, it's in the system, and people can find it. It's in a folder somewhere on the T drive or wherever that can be found. In fact, that would be, I haven't seen this yet, but maybe Katie can help. GPS points, are they referred to in a stream survey report as to where to find that data? Or can you record that in AQS somewhere?
Well, you could put it in it could be in the comments, but most of the time I think people are actually downloading their points and like specifically ending their reaches at the points that their GPS points that are on the map. So, depending on whether they mapped them, I don't know that people actually write down the actual coordinates. And there's no
Okay.
specific location for them.
No specific location. Yeah, so that's, in my experience, that's a real important point to make, is make sure you document where this data goes. It's like accessory to the survey. Okay, anything else? Good question. Treat yourself to some chocolate after this presentation, okay? Okay, photographs are real important because the surveyor in the future can take that photograph and find that same place and identify it. Tributaries are great places for course, because you often have more than 20% of the flow coming out of a tributary. So you want to make sure you take a photo of that tributary as well as the main stem. Road crossings are often used. Cliffs, not as often, but it can be a place where the channel gradient changes radically at a bedrock niche, like a cliff or something. So yeah, photos are really important, and make sure that they're filed away in a place that's documented. Reach reality checks. Let's do a reality check here on the characteristics of that reach that we had anticipated during the level 1 overview. Did we, how do they compare? So the cool thing about doing the stream survey in the field is that in the office, you only get measured values of channel gradients and valley widths derived from a topo map. And you can look at patterns, sinuosity patterns, get an idea of what sinuosity might be, but there's no data available for that. So 2 additional attributes from the field, your field surveys now can help you refine or define and nail down your Rosnian stream type guesses or validate previous Rosnian stream typing for each reach that you surveyed. So what are those attributes? They're entrenchment ratio and bankful width over depth ratio. So entrenchment, again, as Bob did a great job explaining, is the flood prone width over the bankful width. That's maximum bankful width. It's also, we got the bankful width over depth ratio, which is bankful width over average bankful depth. So you'll have that data available to you, and you can determine, I would encourage you, if you can, in the field at the end of the survey, crunch those numbers and find out what those entrenchment and width depth ratios are, and then plug it into your chart and see if that Roskin stream type that you thought it was or had given, but or did preliminarily determined, is that correct, or do we need to adjust it again? Yeah, I just want to go over quickly how to take that flood prone width over bankful width. That's the degree of entrenchment. So the wider the flood prone width is versus the bankful width, the less entrenched it is. But the closer that flood prone width and bankful width is in width, in measurement, then the more entrenched it is. And the width depth ratio is also tells you how confined or shallow and how wide that is. And that's another characteristic that'll help you determine the Roskin stream type. Now, I just want to go over some common mistakes with final reach delineations. Katie already did a great job going over some of those with looking at some forms, but you want to make sure that before you leave for home that you look at your data, make sure that the headers are filled out, maybe not the HUC code. I'll give you that, Katie, but the blanks there's no blanks. And if there are blanks and you know that there's no data, or there's nothing to record there, it's 0 or NA or something, anything's better than just a blank. So a reach must end at a unique sequence order, but the river mile 2 of a reach becomes a river mile from. So, for example, say reach 1 ended at SO40 and river mile 1, reach 2 would start at SO41, but also start at river mile 1.0. Remember that the level 1's just an office overview. It's just a first cut of what you're going to encounter in the field. So filling out a final reach form is necessary to document an overview from the field. It's another overview for ologists and others looking at the data. It gives us framework for the data. So review that preliminary reach form and update that info on the final reach form, and make sure you write down why you chose those final reach breaks. That was one of the biggest struggles I had as a stream survey, aquatic inventory lead with my surveyors that I had back in the 90s was they would take the data and they come back with final reach forms with nothing in comments about why they broke the reaches. So I'd have to pry that out of them and sometimes write that in myself. But so in this case, I just wanted to show you an example of what I filled out for White Juice Creek back in 2016. We did a map exercise on that. And this is some of the data that we looked at again from level 1 to level 2. So originally we had a CDA for reach 1 is what the seasonals had done in their map exercise on the table. And then in reach 2 we had a C or an F. So we couldn't really determine which one, and that's okay. When you head out the stream, you may have 2 different stream types you're looking at, and then you would just pick one at the end in final reach. And then in comments, it's really important to put in why you broke that reach. Flow regime change was the reason in reach 1. And then there's an artificially channelized section that characterized reach 2. And then later we changed that into an F, RST, Roskin stream type F, based on the data that was collected in the training. So again, you're looking at these patterns and profiles, those kinds of gradients preliminarily. And so you have this in mind as you're surveying through the stream, and then you may In this case, we ruled out that middle one, DA, because the channel didn't look like a braided channel after we surveyed it. It was more of a single thread, not multiple thread. But you can't tell on a map. In a map exercise, you can't determine how many threads of channel that you're surveying until you're actually out there. On LiDAR you could, but we don't always have that. And then the final reach map. You want to have a good final reach map to include in the report. And with that, especially when you've got complex hydrology with varying discharge data, you got diversions and you got irrigation ditches running off. It's really good to even put on the map those discharge readings that were collected, and that also gives the picture as to why, in this case, the reaches were broke based on largely on differences in flow regimes, discharges. So that's White Juice Creek, but I'm sure you're going to have most of your channels are going to be simpler than that, and you can have a nice simple map to include for the report that you submit. Okay, that takes you back to an eagle's eye view of your stream. Once again, you've pulled back, you've looked at the stream from a bigger scale, and you've wrapped it up, and you buttoned it up, and you're ready for reporting out and for that data to go into AQS, hopefully, after, of course, you've done your quality control checks. And so that's all I have for final reach delineations. Are there any questions? I can find out. There we go. Any questions or comments? Katie, you got anything you want to share?
I have a question.
Sure.
When you're saying that the valley and everything should be similar at the end as at the when you started, aren't creeks and stuff really kind of small and entrenched at first, and then they get broader as they flow out? I mean, they're not all
Right. Well, you'd be surprised. I think you'll learn something about the impact, the effect that discharge has on a stream. So when you have that's why tributary junctions are so often a determining factor for a reach, because unless you have multiple tributaries, which isn't really the case in most streams, you don't have many tributaries that contribute enough flow to change the stream, say within a half mile from a broad alluvial section to something that's really narrowed down where your habitat dimensions are dissimilar. So yeah, reach breaks, reaches are really a real characteristic you can find in the field, because flow regimes really do determine consistent habitat types and channel gradient as well. You got a consistent channel gradient throughout that reach. It'll hold true from the lower to the upper end of that reach pretty consistently. And
okay.
yeah,
Thank you.
hopefully you'll find that when you're out there. Good question. Have some chocolate.
Gonna see who's gonna offer chocolate. I think Dolly,
Yeah,
she's got enough chocolate
it's
for all of us now.
Chocolate. Huh?
You know, somebody brought chocolate over there.
Yeah, where's my
All right,
chocolate?
bring some tomorrow.
All right.
Cool.
Thank you, Dave.
You bet.
Okay.
Hope to see you tomorrow.
So now that Dave, we went through all of that final reach and got all of our data collected. Folks, let me know. Can they see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Disappears on screen. Okay, so now you've collected all of your data, got your final reach form, everything is collected, and you're ready to write the report. This is your final step. So it's, you've got your entered into AQS or Aquatic Surveys database. It's analyzed. Now you're going to write that report. Now, these reports are just a key component of stream surveying. It doesn't really pay to collect a bunch of data and never put it into a report. You can get some stuff from an Excel spreadsheet, but really getting that written report can really convey a lot of the stuff that you saw during that survey. So report writing, report presentation style is really important. I like to utilize bullet statements. Something like this will give you a bullet statement that's clear, it's concise, people can pull out the information they want. You have to understand who's your audience. Can anybody tell me, just throw it out there, who you think your audience is? Open up your mics and yell away.
Other scientists.
Somebody said other scientists.
The other ologists.
Other ologists, absolutely. You've got wildlife biologists. What's that?
Universities and other outside entities, watershed people.
Yep, a lot of watershed councils. I've had several universities ask for data for reference reaches in wilderness areas. Anybody else?
Management teams.
Yep, management teams. So that would be anybody, all of your staff officers, if there's what we call ID teams for doing NEPA analysis, they're always going to be looking for our data. Somebody else said recreational fisher people. They definitely, I've had people come and ask me, where's that deep hole? Can I see the data for this stream, and where's the deepest holes? Where's the good fish? So there's definitely a broad audience for this data. I actually had one time I had an author come. He writes books about the best swimming holes in every state, and he came and looked through all of my data to find the best swimming holes. So you'd be amazed who comes and looks for your data. So you're right. So it's staff and line officers, your professional ologists, and the public. These are all really important people who are going to be looking for your data. So another part of the report writing is that you're going to have review and input from a journey level professional. So most of the time when you write the report, then I would send it off to the fisheries biologist at that district level for them to review. And then they can help to input, give you input about what kind of recommendations they may suggest. So how is that report used? There's project planning. We talked about that on yesterday. I guess it was only yesterday. But if you've got different, either timber sales or if you've got a restoration project, they're going to use this data to help them guide where they might go with their project. Watershed analysis. Those are big plans that overlook entire watersheds. Then they can plan for the future to see where they want to make some improvements or what needs to be done to help the overall health of that watershed. We have larger landscape analysis. We have wild and scenic river plans. There's a ton of different analysis going on that will help to that this data supports. We have consultation for listed species. A lot of our streams have anadromous fish, Chinook coho listed fish, it could be listed amphibians. We collect all of that information because we're the ones out there hitting the ground, and that information is really important to help that. So the presentation of the information, if you want a nice summary, the summary is going to highlight your conditions. It's going to identify your issues and give you and point out any opportunities that you may need for improvement. Then you have your main body of your report. Your main body is going to have, it's a watershed overview. So I like to have the stream name, your and all the information that's right up front. That way people know where you were looking. Then you have your reach summaries, and those are just nice summaries. If somebody doesn't want to go into the main body or into really getting into the meat of the data, the reach summary gives them just a nice quick view of what's going on in that reach. It's going to summarize all the data that you collected. If there's any management issues or any issues going on with stream conditions, those are all going to be highlighted in the main body of the report. Then you have maps, photos, and graphs. You can't really imagine how important it is to have a good map and photos, because that's really what tells the story of the stream. A map should consist of, it kind of goes from the big to the little. So you should have a basin map, then go down to your vicinity map, watershed scale map, and then a reach break map, and then a map that has your different barriers, management activities, anything that you really saw that kind of jumped out at you as being important things that somebody should know about. Just an example, this is just an example of a reach break map. It doesn't have a ton of other information in it, but it actually shows where the reach breaks are on the map, so that when somebody's looking, they can know exactly where it is to look. If they're looking for data in reach 3, they know where reach 3 is located. Again, photos. This is just, it says it's a barrier to fish passage upstream. There's somebody standing in the photo. It's good to have a reference with somebody with a staff in his hand. So it just gives you an idea. You can actually see the extent of what that waterfall. I mean, it's not a very big waterfall, but there's somebody in there to be a guide. And then graphs. Everybody likes to see graphs. This is just a standard pebble count graph. It tells you where your D50s are. You can do ones for water temperature. If you've got hobo temperature monitors out, 7-day averages. There's all kinds of different graphs that you can provide. And the recommendations. And these are items that you've seen as you were looking at the, if you think, hey, there's not enough wood in this area, or we've got a trail crossing that needs to be monitored or it needs to be fixed. These are all parts of the recommendations that you might put in to the fish biologist. And then when the fish biologist, hopefully they'll read your report and they'll actually can maybe give you more recommendations to add to your report. So you're not done until that report is drafted, and it should be reviewed by an ologist where they will make recommendations. And if you have some recommendations, definitely put them in there. They can always tell you, we're never going to be able to do that. Take that one out. And they'll also let you know whether or not there's issues that if sending it out to the public, you have to be really careful when you write a report about writing in your opinion. You need to really just state the facts, and that way people can interpret that data and decide on their own kind of what might need to be done.
Katie?
Yes?
Yeah, I have another question. What about litigation? Would these ever be directly used if somebody comes up and has a lawsuit about this or that against the forest?
Absolutely. And that's why you really need to kind of stay away from, direct opinions, because, or just, like we were told, we had put in one time that we had a major slide, and somebody had written in that thing, this major slide was caused by the clear cut above. Boy, somebody came back and said, that's not what caused that slide. That was caused by something else. And there was and so you have to be really careful. And so if you're going to write a report, you need to say a slide occurred near a clear cut area, or it originated at a road crossing. So you need to really make sure that you're just writing in the opinions, because yes, it can definitely be used. Your data, your raw data can be used for litigation. So whatever you write within your raw data, you have to be really careful about as well. And this is just filling up your waders. It's always the fun part of the season. So congratulations. You've at least completed the virtual part of the stream inventory course, with the exception of Bruce's snorkel safety section. But hopefully I will see most of you down in Sisters, so drive safely. Have a fun and safe summer, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow. And then we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to cover some snorkel safety stuff with Bruce, and then I'm going to do some closeout, and we will hopefully be able to get on the road and get you guys down to Sisters, and we can actually see each other face to face. So let's take a